The air in the auditorium was thick with pride, nerves, and restless anticipation. Families filled every seat, clutching programs, cameras, and tissues, waiting for their child's name to be called at graduation. Among them sat a tall, broad-shouldered man with tired but steady eyes. His skin carried the story of long days in the sun and long nights in deserts far from home. His name was Marcus Carter, a retired black Marine. This wasn't just another ceremony for him. It was his son's graduation, a moment he had fought, bled, and sacrificed for. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but firm, speaking almost to himself, yet loud enough that the older woman beside him could hear. For years I dreamed of this day. Not the medals, not the uniforms, not the deployments. This. Watching my boy walk across that stage. That's the real victory. That's the one battle I never wanted to lose. His words cracked slightly at the edges, filled with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. He rubbed the old scar that ran along his forearm, a reminder of battles past. His hands were rough, his posture disciplined. But his heart beat softer now, moved by the sight of his son in that cap and gown. But pride has a way of being tested at the worst possible times. As the students began lining up, two guards in black uniforms approached Marcus. Their voices were clipped, professional, but laced with something cold. "Sir," one said firmly, "we're going to have to ask you to step outside." Marcus frowned, confused. "Step outside? Why?" "I'm here for my son. This is his graduation." The other guard crossed his arms, his tone sharper. "We've had complaints. You don't belong in this section. This seating is reserved." Marcus blinked, trying to process. His ticket was still in his hand. He held it up slowly. "Reserved? This was mailed to me. It has my name on it. I've got every right to sit here." The first guard didn't budge. "Sir, I don't want to make a scene. Please, just step outside." The words stung like a slap. Around him, people pretended not to look, but the silence said everything. A Marine who had served his country, who had risked his life, was being told he didn't belong at his own son's graduation. Marcus's jaw tightened. His voice grew steady, calm, but heavy with something deeper than anger. "I carried men out of firefights when my own legs could barely stand. I've bled on sand that will never remember my name, but you're telling me I don't belong here? At my boy's moment?" The guards shifted uncomfortably, but rules, spoken or unspoken, made them stand firm. "Sir, if you don't cooperate, we'll have to escort you out." Marcus stood slowly, towering over them. The room grew quieter as people noticed the tension building. His son, Daniel, on stage waiting for his row to be called, glanced back just in time to see his father surrounded by two guards. His eyes widened in shock, his lips parting as if to shout. But he froze, unsure what to do. Marcus spoke, his voice louder now, carrying through the hall. "Is this what we've come to? A man can serve, sacrifice, and give everything, yet when it's time to sit as a father, he's treated like a stranger?" The guards reached for his arm. The auditorium seemed to hold its breath. And then it happened. From the side aisle, 6 men stood up together. Their movements were precise, unhesitating, and in perfect unison, like they had trained for this moment their entire lives. They were unmistakable. 6 U.S. Navy SEALs in plain suits but carrying the weight of respect in every step. The leader, a tall man with close-cropped blonde hair and piercing eyes, walked straight toward Marcus and the guards. His voice cut through the silence like steel. "Let go of him!" The guards froze. "Excuse me?" The SEAL stepped closer, his stare unwavering. "You heard me. Let him go. That man has earned more right to be here than anyone in this room." Another SEAL, a Latino man with a scar across his cheek, added, "You don't touch him. You don't move him. You don't even look at him that way again." The tension in the room shifted instantly. What had been quiet embarrassment now turned into a storm of whispers, gasps, and then applause starting from the back rows. Marcus stood still, his chest rising and falling slowly. He hadn't asked for rescue, but in that moment, 6 warriors chose to stand with him, not for rank, not for medals, but for respect. The guards released his arm reluctantly, their faces pale. One stammered, "We were just following—" The SEAL leader cut him off sharply. "Following what? Rules written in disrespect? Policies that strip dignity from men who've given more than most will ever understand? Don't you dare stand behind that excuse." The auditorium roared with applause now. Families stood, clapping, cheering. Daniel, Marcus's son, had tears streaming down his face as he raised his hand high, pointing toward his father in the crowd. The principal tried to regain order on stage, but even she stood a little taller, moved by the moment. Marcus slowly sat back down, his hands trembling slightly. He turned to the SEALs, his eyes moist. Why would you do this for me?" The leader gave a small smile, his voice firm but warm. "Because Marines don't sit alone. Not today. Not ever." The roar of the room drowned everything else. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt not like a soldier forgotten, but a father honored. The ceremony should have gone back to normal after that. But the air inside the auditorium had changed, forever marked by what had just happened. The audience wasn't just clapping for students anymore. They were clapping for a father, a Marine, a man who had carried battles on his shoulders only to almost be stripped of a father's proudest moment. Daniel sat on the stage, trembling slightly, his eyes never leaving his dad. His name hadn't been called yet, but he didn't care. Every muscle in him wanted to run off that stage, to wrap his arms around Marcus and say, "Dad, I saw what they tried to do, and I'll never forget how you stood tall." But he stayed put, because he knew his father. Discipline ran through his veins, and Marcus was sitting upright again, his ticket still clutched in one hand, jaw steady, eyes forward, silently telling his son, "Stay strong. This is your moment." The principal adjusted her microphone, her voice shaky but louder than before. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us continue celebrating these young graduates. But let us also remember the sacrifices families make to reach this day. Sometimes the story behind a diploma is greater than the diploma itself." Her words weren't rehearsed. They were raw, and they cut through the hall like sunlight after a storm. The SEALs who had stood for Marcus quietly positioned themselves in the aisle nearby. They didn't sit back down. They didn't speak again. They simply stood tall, arms crossed, as if guarding not just a Marine, but a truth that too often went unseen. The ceremony carried on. One by one, names were called, families cheered, cameras flashed, yet the shadow of what almost happened lingered. Every time a father or mother stood to clap, people remembered the Marine who was nearly pushed out. Every time a student hugged their parents, eyes shifted back to Marcus, who sat still but carried the weight of the moment like a silent storm. Finally, it came. Daniel Carter. The name rang out through the speakers. The room erupted in cheers. Daniel stood, his legs shaky but his back straight. His cap tilted slightly, his gown rustling as he walked. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like the whole auditorium could hear it. But he didn't walk like the other students. He didn't just march across the stage, grab the diploma, and shake hands. No. Daniel paused at the top of the stairs, turned toward the crowd, and lifted his chin. His eyes locked on Marcus. And then, in front of the entire graduating class, Daniel raised his hand in a crisp salute. Not playful, not casual. A salute sharp, precise, and overflowing with respect. The room gasped. Some students even stopped in their tracks, stunned by the gesture. Marcus froze. For a moment, his hardened Marine heart cracked wide open. He hadn't saluted in years, not since his last day in uniform. But here, in a school auditorium, His son had given him something medals and ribbons never could. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus rose to his feet. He returned the salute. His hand trembled slightly, but his posture was unshaken. The auditorium erupted, this time not just in applause, but in a standing ovation. Strangers clapped until their palms burned. Some cried openly. Even the guards who had tried to remove Marcus looked down, shame washing over their faces. Daniel lowered his salute and walked across the stage, shaking the principal's hand, accepting his diploma. But instead of leaving, he gripped the microphone at the podium. His voice cracked, but his courage held. I wasn't going to say anything today. I thought this was just about a piece of paper. But when I saw my dad almost taken away, I realized something. This isn't just my graduation, it's his too. Because every night he missed at home, every battle he fought, every scar he carries. It's the reason I'm here, the reason I never gave up, the reason I believe in myself. So today, I don't just graduate as Daniel Carter. I graduate as the son of Marcus Carter, United States Marine. The audience erupted again. Some students cheered his name, others cried into their hands. Parents reached for their children. And Marcus lowered his head into his hands and wept silently, not out of weakness, but out of the kind of pride that feels too big for words. One of the SEALs, the blonde-haired leader, turned slightly toward him and whispered, "He's got your fire." Marcus chuckled through his tears. "No, he's got his own. Stronger than mine ever was." As Daniel walked back to his seat, a woman in the crowd touched Marcus's shoulder. She was older, with silver streaks in her hair, her voice soft. "Sir, thank you for showing us what real strength looks like. It's not in medals or uniforms. It's in moments like this." Marcus looked at her, his voice quiet but steady. "Strength isn't about what you carry on your shoulders. It's about what you refuse to let them take away from your heart." The ceremony ended with cheers echoing out into the parking lot. Families reunited, photos were taken, laughter rang through the warm evening air. But something lingered. People who had never spoken to Marcus before approached him, shaking his hand, thanking him, not just for his service, but for reminding them what dignity looked like. Daniel found his father outside, under the wide sky. His diploma in one hand, he wrapped his arms around Marcus and held on tight. "Dad, did I make you proud?" Marcus gripped him just as tight, his voice breaking. "Son, you didn't just make me proud, you made the world remember what honor is." Behind them, the 6 SEALs approached quietly. They didn't want recognition. They didn't want thanks. But Marcus stopped them with a firm handshake. "You didn't have to stand up today," Marcus said softly. "But you did. And you reminded me I'm not alone. For that, I'll never forget you." The leader nodded. "That's what brothers do." And just like that, they walked away into the crowd, disappearing like shadows, leaving only the echo of what they'd done. The sun had started to dip behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the school courtyard. Families still lingered, taking pictures, hugging, laughing, capturing memories they would revisit for years. But for Marcus and Daniel, this day had already etched itself into their souls forever. They walked side by side in silence for a while, the cool evening breeze brushing against their faces. Daniel clutched his diploma, but more than that, he carried the image of 6 strangers standing for his father burned deep into his heart. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. His voice was soft, almost childlike again, though his frame now carried the confidence of a young man. "Dad, did it hurt? Not the scar, not the years away, but did it hurt when they told you to leave?" Marcus paused, his footsteps slowing. He looked at his son, the boy who had once fallen asleep on his chest while he wore his camouflage uniform, the boy who had once stood at the door crying when his father left for another deployment. "Yes," Marcus admitted quietly. "It hurt. Not because I couldn't handle it, I've been told worse, I've been treated worse, but it hurt because it was your day, and they tried to take that away. That's the one thing I could never accept. I can lose blood, I can lose battles, but I won't lose the right to stand proud as your father." Daniel's eyes glistened, his voice breaking. "I saw them put their hands on you, Dad, and I froze. I felt useless. I should have done something." Marcus placed a heavy hand on his son's shoulder, gripping firmly. "Son, you did. You stood on that stage, in front of everyone, and you saluted me. That moment, that was stronger than anything I could have done. That wasn't weakness, that was courage. The kind of courage this world needs more of." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I didn't plan it. It just felt right." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's how you know it came from your heart." They stopped near Marcus's old pickup truck, its paint faded, its edges rusty, but its presence steady, like the man himself. Marcus leaned against it, folding his arms as he looked at the glowing horizon. "Life's funny, Daniel," he said slowly. "People measure strength in muscles, medals, money, but real strength? It shows up in moments when nobody expects it, when 6 men stand for one, when a son honors his father in front of the world, or when a father swallows his pride and lets his son shine." Daniel nodded slowly, letting his father's words sink into him. As they stood there, one of the SEALs, the scarred Latino man, walked by again, this time alone. He stopped briefly, his expression calm but purposeful. "Mr. Carter," he said, "today you reminded every single person in that room what respect looks like. Don't ever underestimate the power of one man standing tall, because sometimes the world just needs to be reminded." Marcus extended his hand, and the SEAL gripped it firmly before walking away without another word. The parking lot grew emptier. Daniel placed his diploma carefully on the dashboard of the truck, then turned to his father. "Dad, when I have kids one day, I want to be like you. Not because of what you did in uniform, but because of who you are when the uniform is gone." Marcus's chest tightened with emotion. He pulled Daniel into a hug, holding him close. "That's the greatest legacy I could ever leave, son. Not medals, not honors. Just you, carrying respect in your heart and giving it to others." For a long moment, they stood there, father and son, soldier and graduate, 2 men bound by more than blood. Bound by honor, respect, and a love that no guard, no rule, no prejudice could ever erase. And in that quiet moment, Marcus whispered words his son would carry for life. "Never let anyone tell you where you don't belong, because the truth is, you belong wherever you stand tall." And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Every single day, there are moments where someone will try to make you feel small, unworthy, or out of place. It might not be in a graduation hall. It might be at your workplace, in a classroom, or even among people you thought were friends. And in that moment, you'll have 2 choices. You can shrink, or you can stand tall. Standing tall doesn't always mean raising your voice. Sometimes it's as simple as not backing down from what's right. Sometimes it's showing kindness when no one else will. Sometimes it's refusing to let someone take away the pride you've earned. Marcus stood tall when they told him to leave. His son stood tall when he saluted him in front of the world. And 6 men stood tall when they reminded a room full of people that respect is not optional. It's owed. So the next time life tries to push you out of your place, remember this story. Remember that dignity, respect, and love are battles worth fighting for. And remember that strength isn't about being the loudest in the room. Sometimes true strength is the silence that makes everyone else stop and listen. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone in your life who stands tall no matter the odds, then take a moment right now. Subscribe to Black Saga, drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and hit that like button. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, one story is all it takes to remind the world what respect truly means.